All right, now let's do some fan questions.
Hey, Chael. When I go to sleep at night with my girlfriend, she plays solitaire, and I watch the new Chael Sonnen videos. And she asked me, is he a fighter? I said yes. I gave her the backstory about everybody you fought, your long career, and it really had me thinking about a lot of fighters, especially you having long careers. And so my question is, how do you maintain longevity in an MMA career? Any secrets?
Well, so I'm interpreting your question two ways. And the first is physically. How do you stay in there physically? Now, I had a long career, so I get asked that a lot, and apparently my opinion matters because I could use myself as an example. But I think there's some luck in that, right? Maybe some healthy living, maybe with the kind of matches that you had, the way that you train. I think there's a few things in that. But where I got that from to extend my career, right? Randy Couture was the original guy at Team Quest. He was the guy everybody looked up to, including myself, and he made it to 47 years old. So there was something there, first off, to aspire to. But I did study Randy. I watched him. And I've heard him talk about this. I've never heard him say this, but I think I'm right. I think he doesn't even know. I believe, personally, what got Randy so long and the reason he never got passed up and the reason he always stayed current, he used to train with the kids. Now, he would come to our practice and we'd all work out, but then he used to coach at a high school in town and he would go work out with those guys, 14, 15, 18-year-olds. And he would be in the room working out with them. Now, what's relevant there? That's 2 generations back. And generally today's stars get passed up, right? They get passed up and it's just new talents and it's just new skills and it's just kind of a new way of doing things and some new philosophies and beliefs and they get passed up. He was training with 2 generations back. There was just at least logically no way for him to ever get passed up. He not only was with the next guys, he was even further. Freshmen and juniors, and I mean, he was working with these kids. He was seeing what they were doing. He was staying current. He was coaching them, but he was also listening. It was very unique, and it was something that I had to do. And you have to humble yourself. That can be an awkward sit. You know, you're walking in, there's a bunch of kids. You know, you got to go through kids practice. That may sound silly, but if you're a wrestler, you know what I mean. Kids practice is the hardest thing you can do. The older you get, the shorter the practices get. The older you get, the more you're set in your own skills. You don't need as much technique. You don't need as much skill building. You just don't. You have your skills. Here's what I'm going to do. Let me get in shape. Let me refine them, and let's go. And practices are built that same way. They'll go from 2-hour practices all the way down to a 60-minute practice. By the time you're trying to make world and Olympic teams, maybe more like an 80-minute practice, hour, 20 minutes. But they get shorter and shorter and shorter. They get more intense. But I would always watch Randy do that. I would watch him humble himself. I would watch him go in there. Not only would he work with the kids, he would listen to the kids.
Chael, we talk about the punches, the kicks, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu. Which fighters have the best psychology?
Okay, so that's one that I will happily answer for you, but check back in a year and expect a different answer. Check back a year after that, expect a whole different answer. One thing about this sport is it has been said for many times it is within its infancy. Now, I don't personally believe that to be true anymore. I don't. When I first started as a fan in 1993, yeah, for sure. Those guys by today's standards would be garbage. In 2000, it was something totally different. Those guys were wonderful at that time, but by today's standard, that skill set would be garbage. Wouldn't even get signed. I think that slows down though. I don't know that I could say the guys in 2010 were garbage skill set wise and couldn't get signed. I think that it has slowed down. I think that's proof that it's no longer in its infancy. But as far as the philosophies, that's ever evolving. And we've had different periods. We're specialists. I mean, that's what it was. That's why they were calling it putting a mixture, different martial artists against one another. But then we started to find out about this well-roundedness. But after we got into the well-roundedness, we started to see some specialists take back over. Right? Everybody started watering themselves down, watering their top skill set down to try to learn everything because that's what was the belief that you needed to do to be successful. And all of a sudden, a guy that was one skill heavy but understood range and distance could come in and start to take back over. So it's going to move, and that's not going to stop. It's going to continue to move. But one thing that you are definitely seeing within the sport now is just simply better athletes. Guys that could have been world class, whether that meant the Olympic level, whether that meant NFL, whether that meant Major League Baseball, but that level of athlete that wouldn't have chose fighting, that would have been a low rung, that would have been a default, I can't make it over here, I'm a reject, I'm going to go into this. Okay, great, there's a spot for you. But that's changing. You're seeing very high-level athletes of all levels that maybe had Olympic dreams, but instead of pursuing that after college, they went into this. Or you're seeing guys that were college football players, college baseball players, Stipe comes to mind, that then went and pursued this, but these were top-level athletes. That's something you're seeing, and as you see that, you're going to see the sport really start to grow. I will tell you one significant difference in training, at least, is just the level of sparring. First off, I'm seeing the protective gear changing. Bigger headgear, bigger gloves. I love that. That's important. And I can also tell you, and this, I'm dating back about 2 years now, but I think that's recent enough to answer your question. Used to spar every single day. That was part of practice. You went hard every single day. It just mattered if you were wearing big gloves or little gloves. Now, very common. Guys are doing two times a week max. Some gyms 1 time a week. But I think as that lessens, then guys, skill building starts to grow. It's not necessarily an emphasis on the conditioning and the power. It starts to be about the skills. I think we're seeing better skills come about, and that's probably part of the philosophy you're speaking to.
Okay, I have a 2-part question. First, do you think when DC and Stipe fight again, will this even...
You know, friend, can I ask you a question? Just between you and I. Are you naked? Did you make that video naked? How come you're not wearing any clothes? Did you not know this was going to be recorded? I mean, you know how this works. I put this out. You should really consider getting dressed. This guy's naked. I don't know if you've seen the video.
Uncle Chael, could you please tell us peons about your best walkout ever? Something that just gets your blood pumping, gets your fist moving, gets you dancing. I mean, can you share the deets?
Okay, so what are you asking me? My best walkout ever? I don't know that I ever personally had some great walk, right? The music comes on and you head out to the cage was kind of how I saw it. Now, if you're asking me the best walkout I've ever seen, I only got to go back 2 weeks. It was Israel, for sure. And there's a couple of things to Adesanya's walkout. First off, to entertain on your way to a cage fight against the world champion, which would be a very scary, a very stress-filled, a very focused moment. For him to have no stress, no fear, and no focus at all. Oh, and by the way, he was in front of 57,000 record-breaking people in a foreign country. Oh, which happens to be his home country's bitter rival. I thought there was something special there. And then when I got armed with the backstory, which was that he had walked out the day before, never told the UFC he was doing this, brought 3 childhood friends with him, and they rehearsed it 4 times, and then walked out and did it on live TV and were in perfect unison. Izzy.
Hey, Uncle Chael. JD here, Sage here. Just want to say it was a pleasure meeting you back at UFC 236 right here in Atlanta. And I wanted to run something by you. Currently in the UFC, we have 92 fighters in the welterweight division and 100 fighters in the lightweight division. So why the heck does Dana White and the UFC not want to open up a 165-pound division? And if you were the UFC commissioner, who would you put in the first ever 165-pound title bout? And why? Thanks so much, man. Have a great day.
JD, what's happening, buddy? Good to see you. Okay, now you said a few things there. Let's take a look at this. First off, great job on knowing those numbers. You taught me something. I did not know that, but I also don't dispute that. Those are pretty full divisions. However, I'm not certain how tying in the logjam of those 2 weight classes necessarily calls for 165. Now, with that said, I'm on your side. I would love to see a 165. And that seems to be all the talk right now, this 165, but I'm all for it. I'd like to see a 220 as well. I'd like to see kind of that middle ground. I've always thought there was a big gap between light heavyweight of 205 pounds to heavyweight of 265 pounds. I kind of like that in between. And there's a lot of guys there as well. Somehow the dialogue has started, though, more powerfully to do this 165-pound class. It's a little bit of a trick, though, when you have 170 sitting right there. What do you do with 170? You make it 185. 5 pounds is a little bit weird, particularly for non-championship fights. They get a pound allowance. They're talking about a 4-pound separation. It's just a little bit weird. Unless you're moving 170 to 175, and that's a lot of work. That's a lot of effort. I love the opportunity. I'm all for it. I like the interim championship. A lot of guys don't. But it does satisfy a need of giving opportunity. So that's what we're talking about here. Maybe we wouldn't need as many interim championships. We could do championships other ways. Boxing does it. There's a historical legacy behind it in terms of having a lot of divisions. I'm all for it.
Hey, Chael. I'm here with the future strawweight champion of the world. And our question for you today is about the Damian Maia and Ben Askren fight. What happens to either one of those fighters if they win? If Damian Maia wins, what's going to happen with him? Where's he going to go? What would be a good spot for him to be? And then with Ben Askren, what's he going to do? You know, and my real question is, what if Ben Askren loses? Do you think he'll be kicked out of the UFC? It's clear that Dana White doesn't really like him. His fight over Robbie Lawler was very controversial. His fight with Masvidal, we all know how that ended. So if he loses this fight too, do you think Dana White's going to say that's enough? You go somewhere else? I'd like to hear what you think.
Okay, so instead of making a prediction, let me just tell you what these guys have said. Now, only Damian spoke out about this, and it hasn't been recent, but after Damian's last fight, he did say he wanted to do one more. He kind of set this up as a retirement fight. Now, he went a little further to call out Diego Sanchez and to say that he wanted it to be in Brazil, neither of which happened. He's not taking on Diego, and he's not even in Brazil, which in many ways to me signified that it's also a revocation of the statement that this is his last fight. I haven't heard him talk about that. I haven't heard him say that. It sounded pretty clear that if everything could go well and he could get over to Brazil and, you know, maybe have some success and go out on a high note, that he was going to be done. Because none of those things happened, I don't believe it to be his last fight. But if he is considering it, and should he come in second and get knocked down in the ratings, maybe this would be the last time you'd see Maia. As far as Askren goes, Askren's never really weighed where he wants to go from here. He's made it very clear he'd like a rematch with Masvidal. Yeah, I'm sure we can imagine that. He's also made it very clear on the negative end of the spectrum, hey, if I don't beat Damian Maia, things aren't looking so great for me. I'm not just around here to be one of the boys. I came over to be champion. I've been champion everywhere I went. Every organization, every weight class. This is what I'm used to. If I don't have a path to the championship, I'm not really looking to stick around for a paycheck. So I think there's a lot on this fight. I think there's a lot for both guys, but I also think that it's one of those interesting matches. Both guys are very confident they're going to win. It's one of those things. Maia is very confident he can deal with Askren on the ground. Askren's very confident that he can deal with Maia there. Anytime you have a fight, I'll just say this, where both guys are sure they're going to win, it adds a special element.
Uncle Jill, Uncle Jill. There's no bad guy like Uncle Jill.